Support for LPB's 2021 Louisiana Young Heroes is provided by
At AmeriHealthcare Louisiana, we help people get care, stay well, and build healthy communities. Care is the heart of our work at AmeriHealthcare Louisiana.
and by the U.S. Army Baton Rouge Recruiting Battalion, Community Coffee, and the East Baton Rouge Parish Library, with additional support from Hotel Indigo and Dimco.
Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
The first step is admitting that they have a problem.
Concerns over decriminalization.
And then they added on dollars.
Federal dollars in the state budget.
He asked to go to the Chalmette battlefield at the age of 4.
And now he's an LPB Louisiana Young Hero.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andre Moreau. Kara St. Cyr is off tonight. First on LSWI, no one needed a reminder. It was hurricane season, but we're getting one, a big one, just the same. A disorganized system formed in the Gulf this week and is now making its way into the state, the southeast part of the state. Storm surge could be a problem and rain, some of it heavy. The governor has declared a state of emergency because of it. Vaccination incentives, another big story. At the governor's Thursday briefing, there was a brass band helping announce a vaccine lottery worth $2.3 million. It's all in hopes of getting more people to roll up their sleeves and get vaccinated.
The way this is going to work is 14 lucky Louisianans with at least one COVID shot will win cash prizes or scholarships throughout the month of July, culminating with a grand prize of $1 million.
Plus, there is big news from LSU Shreveport. The day after LSU Med School Chancellor Dr. Gali was reinstated, he resigned the post. He was put on leave earlier this year over allegations of sexual misconduct. And now we'll look at other stories making headlines across the state.
The U.S. Supreme Court again upheld the Affordable Care Act this week, the defining domestic legacy of President Barack Obama, surviving a third major challenge of relentless Republican hostility. Governor John Bel Edwards praised the court, saying this is a lifeline for Louisianans in lower wage jobs and those with pre-existing conditions. Attorney General Jeff Landry joined the political battle from Texas, where a lower court there tried to kill the health care law. Another chunk of money from FEMA is headed to parishes impacted by Hurricanes Laura and Delta. The governor made the announcement Thursday. It's from FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which had already given $40 million to help people recover from those terrible 2 storms last fall. The governor also announcing he's turning off federal pandemic unemployment benefits at the end of July in exchange for a long-term, modest boost to the state's jobless benefits. Republican lawmakers and business organizations agreed to an increase of up to $275 a week maximum in weekly unemployment checks. 15 years later, Citgo has agreed to pay almost $20 million for environmental damage from a 2006 oil spill at the Lake Charles refinery. The spill was in the water treatment facility. Another Texas company is also paying the state for damages from spills. Great Lakes Dredge and Dock paying a $1 million fine for damaging a pipeline that leaked more than 5,000 gallons of oil into Bay Long, south of New Orleans. That was in 2016. A Louisiana federal judge Tuesday blocked the Biden administration's suspension of new oil and gas leases on federal land and water. If it sticks, it'll be a blow to the president's desire to rapidly transition away from fossil fuels in hopes of staving off the worst effects of climate change. Before wrapping their session, state lawmakers charted the spending of nearly $1.7 billion in federal pandemic aid, creating a network of programs to send money to ports, water systems, tourism marketing efforts, and broadband projects where needed. More than $1 billion went to road and bridge work and to shore up the near-bankrupt Unemployment Trust Fund. A feud continues to intensify between former friends. Family members of former LSU President Troy Middleton are suing the school to return a collection of his military items displayed on campus. They're also seeking monetary damages for extreme humiliation caused by LSU's denouncement of his segregationist views. Middleton was president from 1951 to 1962, but last summer, LSU removed his name from the main library after letters and news reports from his time as president describe his belief in racial segregation. Juneteenth is officially tomorrow, the 19th, but state workers got a half-day holiday today. Juneteenth commemorates the end of slavery in the United States. The Miss Louisiana pageant returns to Moreau this weekend after a pandemic year off. The 57th annual competition takes place at the Jack Howard Theater. 30 contestants will compete. Courtney Hammonds, a grad student at Louisiana Tech, is the reigning Miss Louisiana.
You may have heard the name Carla Brown in this recent news cycle. She's a nurse who is taking the battle against COVID into her own hands. She suffered a devastating loss to the virus herself and says no one else should have to. Tonight, her vaccination crusade and how it got started.
It's been a long year and a half for most people in America. But for Carla Brown, time stood still for nearly 10 months.
Not knowing, I brought the virus home to my family.
This was Brown's biggest fear in 2020. She's a nurse. She worked with geriatric psych patients in the beginning of the pandemic, before people knew to social distance or wear a mask.
Where people were saying it's going to go away, it's a host. We weren't prepared in the psych world because we did not have that luxury of a big hospital where you can separate. We didn't have that.
While caring for other people, the worst-case scenario became her reality. She tested positive. Her husband, David Brown, her father, and her brother were all exposed before she even knew that she was carrying.
My dad, my brother, they all survived with not having to be placed on a vent. However, David was not so lucky.
David Brown and Carla had been married for over 20 years. She said he was goofy and loved eating at Waffle House. When he was diagnosed with COVID-19 in May, he stayed in the hospital for months until he died on July 17th. Brown says that was the day the world stopped spinning. She couldn't get rid of the guilt.
My David had survived a liver transplant for 10 years. He survived bone marrow cancer, where he was totally in remission of it. He survived a gunshot wound to his head, young in life. So my husband survived all of that, only to die from a virus I brought home.
There was a lot to take in after David died. He wasn't the only person she knew that would lose their life to the virus. Several family members and friends passed within the year. It seemed like nothing would change as Louisiana entered a third wave of the virus, especially in North Baton Rouge, where Brown lives. The population is majority Black and has a high number of hesitant people. But according to her, it isn't just because they aren't sure about the vaccine, but because not everyone knows how to get it.
I said, God, I have to do something to make a change. That's when Miss Carla started going door to door to the elderly people. Because then I found out, and I went online myself with my own computer, my own cell phone. And it says, go to this website and, register, select your date, put your information. I say, my God, we are missing those who really need it. They are not computer savvy. Most of them have government phones. Most of them don't have transportation.
So if these people couldn't get to the clinics and the hospitals themselves, Brown was going to bring it to them. She went door to door explaining how vaccines worked. She signed people up, and she drove them to clinics. And when that wasn't enough, she administered the vaccines herself. She called her effort the COVID Crusaders.
Come on up, Carl. Thank you.
All of Louisiana started to take notice of Brown's story. The governor even asked that Carla come up and speak about her work during a press conference.
I'm pleading with every American, please get the vaccine. We are there to give you true data. You must understand this vaccine was made to save us, the young, the old. It is important.
Brown's method works. So far, she's reached 1,200 people, and that number is doubling. With every person she meets, it's like helping her husband. Brown says that she prays she can reach enough people and help heal a community broken by this disease.
I pray that we, the American, as a nation, learn from this.
After work every day, Brown goes out and delivers vaccines. She says she won't stop until everyone has gotten their shots. The state's new marijuana laws have some health care specialists concerned, those who counsel the addicted. Emily George Tilley is Director of Clinical Services at O'Brien House in Baton Rouge. Now, she's in favor of reduced penalties for weed, but fears it will likely come at a cost.
The decriminalization of marijuana would definitely make it more difficult for individuals with addictive personalities. Similar to alcohol, you know, it's okay if you have small amounts, but those small amounts using over a protracted period of time can cause some significant consequences. And because marijuana, as we know, is a gateway drug to most things, if you make it okay to just to have a little bit, then they're going to feel like it's okay to have a little bit more. In my experience here, I've been at O'Brien House for 9 years, and 95% of the clients who come through the building, their first drug of choice was marijuana. They experienced using it as a teenager, and then that use became more severe. Then they started with harder drugs. So I do believe that marijuana is a gateway drug into using other things for a person, especially who has an addictive personality.
A lot of recovery is private one-on-one, but a lot of it is in group and together. So this past year, a lot of that was taken away. How has that impacted treatment?
With the use of technology and Zoom meetings and being able to FaceTime and do those things, we've become creative with helping them with treatment, allowing them to get on a meeting in a different state. You know, that was an amazing thing for them to see how other states kind of run meetings and how people from across the world really are doing recovery. So they got to interact more with people outside of their immediate network. But that first isolation period was very difficult for a lot of people, because the fellowship is what makes recovery so important. You have to have that fellowship with people. You can reach people where they're most comfortable. As a social worker myself, I struggle with finding the time to do certain things, but having Zoom available to me where I can do things in the comfort of my own home makes it easier for me. I have a family, I have a job, I have other obligations, and that's what a lot of our clients experience is families working, and coming to yet another thing sometimes makes it more difficult for them to do. But when you can do it in the comfort of your own home or in your car, driving to work or driving to your next obligation is a great thing. It makes it easier for people to manage treatment. I think for a person struggling with an addiction, the first step is admitting that they have a problem. What we do here at O'Brien House is we provide individual and group therapy in an individualized basis. So we have clients from all ranges that are strictly alcoholics, that have done a multitude of drugs, that don't drink. So we make their treatment personal to them.
Hey, have a great day. Thank you again so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You know, for much of the past year, there were tons of questions about what would the money look like in Louisiana? What would the state budget look like? A lot of people really had absolutely no idea. So tons of questions, but ultimately some of those questions got answered in terms of tons of blessings, I think. Jim Richardson, who for 32 years was on the Revenue Estimating Conference and was out there forecasting those numbers. The state is working with $38 billion in their state operating budget, and it's from many different places, but again, the federal is huge. Yes. And I wanted to ask you just to help break it down for us and what it means going forward.
Okay, well, first you have to appreciate 38 is not just the state money, it's also the federal money, which is a large part of that. The state includes state taxes that we pay, fees that we pay, and then some other self-generated money as well. So the state's portion of that 38 is maybe half, okay? But the federal money has been huge, and certainly in the last 2 years because of the pandemic, because of the special programs that were instituted in the American CARES Act in March of 2020, and then the American Rescue Plan in March of 2021.
Huge infusions of money.
Yes.
Which, if those weren't there, I don't know where we would be.
Well, I don't think anybody knows for sure, because what happened is in March of 2020, when they passed the CARES Act, they essentially assisted the states in their unemployment programs in terms of extending them more than what the state's program would have been able to pay for. And then they added on dollars in terms of the extra money, the relief money, $600 a week for a family back in 2020, and that lasted until July of 2020. Right. And that's $600 a week, $2,400 a month. So that's a rather big chunk of money per family, right, which offset if they were laid off, if they could not find work and things like that. Now that went away as of the end of July of 2020. It came back at the end of December of 2020 in a smaller amount, $300 a week, which is still going to be here through July 31st for Louisiana families as extra money if you're unemployed now. If you're unemployed, if you cannot find work, or if you are a gig worker and you don't have ability to really do your business as such.
Right. Think of it this way, though. With all the estimating that you did for years and years, you didn't have a year like this one. So really difficult to try to estimate how the numbers were going to go.
Oh, very much. Well, you've always had some problems in Louisiana. You have oil prices jumping up and down, and you never anticipated exactly what they're going to be. Perfectly impossible. Right. Well, I think here it was a little more complicated because suddenly we had this pandemic, and in 2020, remember, we essentially shut the economy down. We said, okay, restaurants, you can't open.
And didn't know what was ahead.
No, I had no idea.
Really no cuts across the board. The state seems solid. But as you go forward, that money doesn't last.
Well, that's
what do you have to watch out for?
Yeah, we have to be careful because there's no doubt that come September, the federal programs will pretty much end, at least the programs that are helping people who are unemployed. At that point, hopefully people will the jobs to open up again. Now, certainly there's no doubt as you listen, and certainly in Louisiana, there is a concern that employers need more people. Hopefully they'll be able to come back in August, they'll come back and you'll have the jobs available and they'll be able and we'll come back to a more normal economy. And that's what we're hoping for. Now, how that will work out exactly, we don't know because, as you're saying, a lot of the federal money nationwide will kind of stop propping up the economy, and the economy is going to have to operate on its own now. But sooner or later, that's going to have to happen anyway.
Right, but the hope is that will come on, come online pretty much as the other is fading away. So there's not like a collision somewhere.
That's the idea. That's a hope. Right. And the predictions are not necessarily perfect, though.
Right. True. And one thing quickly, the state is going to have a sales tax that's going to roll off at some point. Would do you think there'd be a chance of that being extended?
Well, I think there's always a chance. What happened? It depends. I mean, it rolls off, but there are a couple of things happening that will happen in 2025 that the state, one is a small part of the sales tax will roll off, and if we're still having lots of money, we may not need it, who knows. The other part is that the federal taxes are now deductible. Federal taxes, are, at least according to the federal schedule, will go up in 2025. Now, I don't think that's going to happen exactly. That'll happen for some people, not for everybody, I don't believe. But who knows what may happen. If indeed the federal taxes go up, that will drop our income tax base. Now, there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot of October 9th to do away with that deduction and to lower the rates. I have no idea if the people accept that or will reject it. It's up to them at that point.
All right. Economist Jim Richardson, you always have some interesting points, and this has been a year that's been as complex as they could get. Jim, thanks for your time. I appreciate you being here.
You bet.
This week's LPB Louisiana Young Hero is a National Merit Scholar and a huge history buff. He's done speaking tours at Tulane and published 2 papers about the history of Fontainebleau State Park in Mandeville. But through all of his accomplishments, his brother is his biggest motivation. Kara St. Cyr introduces us to Jack Cantrell.
At 4 years old, Jackson Cantrell was an explorer. He was Pirate Jean Lafitte on a mission to smuggle in goods. Or when he was feeling playful, he was Indiana Jones on a hunt for the Crystal Skull.
I chalk it up to my mother showing me Indiana Jones when I was about 3 years old, so maybe a little bit too early, but I don't know, I've just always found it fascinating, and I'd come out to the park all the time when I was a kid.
His mother, Leanne, says his imagination was endless, and history is what really made it spark.
He asked to go to the Chalmette battlefield at the age of 4. Since then, when they opened the World War II Museum, he asked if we could please get a membership there. So from World War II back to the Battle of New Orleans to all sorts of other historical events, he's just really been interested.
Cantrell was already an explorer in his own right, but this park, the Fontainebleau State Park in Mandeville, it was a whole new adventure to uncover, and it started with a conversation. Greyhawk Perkins, who would later be Jack's mentor, told him the history behind this land. The large oak trees and the brick ruins told a story that was hidden by time, a story Jack desperately wanted to understand. And he would.
About maybe when I was 6 or 7 years old, I ran into one of the rangers here, Greyhawk Perkins, and we got to talking. I don't know, I've just always been a history buff, and he asked me, so Jack, what do you think was that Alley of Oaks was for, since Fontainebleau's famous for it? And I said, oh, was there a big plantation house? Because normally when you see Django Unchained or Roots or anything like that, there's a big plantation house at the end of an Alley of Oaks. And he said, no, that's where the enslaved cabins were.
That information changed everything. Jack thumbed through plantation records and census from the 1800s to learn everything about this place. If he didn't know, surely there were others just as clueless about what happened here. It took a decade to find out who these people were, and what were their names, and what they did. He found that 153 slaves lived in cabins under these oak trees. Hurricanes and flooding eventually rotted them away, and that's what kept the history in the past. But to him, that wasn't a reason to leave it behind.
And that sort of blew me away, because normally you come out to Fontainebleau State Park, you see wedding photos taking place, weddings themselves taking place, baby showers, people having birthdays. And I was sort of disappointed that people didn't know about all the history that was really here at Fontainebleau.
So he made the history of this park known. He put up a plaque directly in front of the Alley of Oaks. It gives a brief history of the people who lived here. And on the other side, he pays homage to his mentor, Greyhawk Perkins, with another plaque explaining the history of Native American tribes that also walked through Fontainebleau. But this was more than just an explorer on an adventure. It was a labor of love.
It started with my brother Cole. Like I said, he's got significant autism. And over the years, I would see people treat him with disrespect. And he doesn't really have the ability to advocate for himself or defend himself or anything like that. So I was always off-put by people who were, detrimental to those who weren't able to fend for themselves or didn't have the right to. And that's sort of, I guess, what really drew me into Fontainebleau really.
In a way, Cole represents the people in Fontainebleau who weren't able to speak for themselves. Digging up their lives and putting it on display gave them more of a voice that they'd have never had otherwise.
Anyway, we're going to get you all loaded up and have fun on the water.
So Jack is continuing his deep dive into untold stories. He gives bayou tours and explains the history of the land to people from all over. He'll be going to Florence, Italy to study this summer before he heads to Florida for his first year of college. He's accomplished a lot at a young age, and his mother says this is only the beginning.
Those who know him, his teachers, his scout leaders, respect what he has done, not in his own name, but in the name of just being a good citizen, being a scout, just being a good person.
Jack says he's not sure what he wants to do just yet, but he's sure history will be a big part of whatever it is that he chooses. And everyone, that is our show for this week. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime, wherever you are, with our LPB app. Of course, it's a free download from your app store. You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows and other Louisiana programs that you have come to enjoy over the years. And please like us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. For everyone at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Moreau. Thanks for watching. Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Support for LPB's 2021 Louisiana Young Heroes is provided by
At AmeriHealthcaritas, Louisiana, we help people get care, stay well, and build healthy communities. Care is the heart of our work at AmeriHealthcaritas, Louisiana.
and by the U.S. Army Baton Rouge Recruiting Battalion, Community Coffee, and the East Baton Rouge Parish Library, with additional support from Hotel Indigo and Dimco.
Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.